Okay, we are live. So next I am going to let in the public. And we can begin.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome to the Tuesday, May 26th, 2020 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you place yourselves on mute as sound transfers easily and can be disruptive. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted throughout the evening and during the meeting and will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. You can also submit your comment using chat in Zoom by clicking on the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. Staff will then read the comment at the appropriate time. Lastly, you may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the participant button located at the bottom of your screen and then raise your hand. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom meeting by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. Okay, so moving on to item number 2, roll call. The record should note that 6 members of our commissioners are present this evening. All right, but do we need to roll call first?
Not for roll call.
Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
You can name all the commissioners that are here.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I've got, we have Commissioner Comarot, Commissioner Gall, Commissioner, Commissioner Schmid, Commissioner Sargent, Commissioner Loftus, and myself, Commissioner Say. Commissioner Toronis is absent tonight. On to agenda item number 3. We do not have any minutes to approve this time around, so move on to item number 4, which is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes from staff.
Thank you. Do we have any recusals?
I will be recusing from Laguna, which
I'll be
is
recusing
item
from Laguna as well.
8B.
8B.
Okay, so I have Commissioners Comarot and Sargent recusing from item 8B. Moving on to agenda item number 5, public comments, non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask if everybody can please mute themselves. Thank you. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time, and I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly into your mic. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda this evening? I don't see anything. So we will move on to the next item. Agenda item number 6, study items. We have no study items this evening. So I will move on to agenda item number 7, consent calendar. We also have no consent calendar items for this evening. So now I move on to agenda item number 8, regular action items. So the first one is item 8A, 818 Acacia Drive. For any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I don't see any. So let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Sure. The proposed project consists of a new 2-story single-family dwelling with a basement and an attached carport at 818 Acacia Drive, zoned R1. The applicant is requesting the following applications: design review, special permit for an attached carport, and a special permit for a direct exit from a basement. At the Planning Commission Design Review Study Meeting on April 27th, the Commission had several comments and suggestions regarding this project. The applicant submitted a response letter and revised plans to address your suggestions. This concludes my presentation, and I believe the applicant is here.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I don't see any, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything else you would like to add to the project?
Good evening. If you can hear me, this is Adam Biddle. I'm the architect for the project. Thanks for taking the time to look at this with us. So we come back from our previous hearing. If you took a look at the front elevation and the site plan, those would probably be the 2 most relevant drawings to reference the changes made. The response letter addressed, there were a few major items, I'd say, and then a handful of minor ones. Most importantly, the scale of the front elevation and the porch was reduced. As discussed and suggested, the porch was tied into the attached garage in terms of height and how it transitions, along with an added roof line. We also pushed the attached garage or carport about 5 to 6 feet further away from the front of the property and added a driveway trellis gate, one of the items that was brought up in the study session to kind of be a transition element similar to what you see with detached garages into the rear of the property when you go up and down Acacia. One of the main features that was brought up was this kind of gate transition element. That's what you see from the public realm. And in coordination with the clients, they also thought it added an element of privacy and security. So all in all, we thought it was a positive move across the board. A handful of minor items. We adjusted the window at the front bedroom that was brought up, the chimney scale and height. We reorganized the floor plan of the storage at the carport and the basement well as it transitions all the way to the rear yard. We removed the rear trellis, and that freed up floor area that allowed us a deeper porch at the front of the house, which shifted everything back. That allowed us to bring the scale and height down at the front of the property. So we appreciated the comments last time, and hopefully, we took a good stab at addressing them as best we could. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Loftus?
Yes, so I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding the relationship between the new trellis element and the walls and the gate. Could you sort of walk us through that a little bit?
Sure, and let me see what floor plan. If you were able to open up A3
Right.
in the drawing, that would be the ground floor plan. Where it's almost blown up, where the driveway gate / trellis is currently. Previously, that was where our front of attached garage was before. So we shifted the attached garage back. The way those walls are set up is that the gates can swing open and have a return wall without, impeding the openness of the attached garage or carport. The trellis element ties in underneath the soffit of the overhang, and that eave line, as you can see on the front elevation, tracks entirely around the front porch, returns back to the carport and around the side of the carport.
So as I understand it, there's sort of a partial height stone wall, and then there's a stone column that's against the property line, and the person gate opens between those two, and the stone wall has two columns coming up. One catches the structure of the house, and the other one catches the trellis. Is that right?
There's no stone against the house. The stone you're seeing there is in the foreground at the side elevation there. There's a man gate that returns to the side fence, and that's for bringing trash and bikes or, without having to open up the driveway gates.
Okay, I think I've got it. Thank you.
And if you saw it on the site plan, I think that might help taking an aerial view.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? I have a couple of questions. What is the gate made of?
Sorry, the new driveway gate?
Yes.
We are anticipating likely a steel similar to the rear of the carport. I don't know if you have the ability to pull up, but the previous rendering we were trying to show a decorative kind of steel gate. So that layering would also reflect at the front of the property. Whereas the man gate on the side that you're seeing on the right, that would be a stained wood.
A wood gate, okay. And then your railing at the front porch, is that painted?
No, well, actually, yeah, we're calling it out as painted wood. I believe in our rendering though, we had transitioned it potentially to be a stain.
Okay. Oh, I don't think we have an updated rendering in our package.
We did not update the rendering. The changes materially weren't significant. It was mostly the scale. So the 2-dimension drawings reflect the changes.
Okay, and the steel gate is framed in steel as well? Or is that painted or wood?
No, it would be something a little more substantial. So it would be steel just for the durability aspect on a gate. But the railing you're referencing would either be a darker stain or potentially a darker paint, which is reflected also in some of the trim elements around windows, doors. So there's a consistent material color palette we're trying to reflect through the project.
Okay. And I'm not sure if I'm just missing where the trellis is. I don't see it on the roof plan. Is it in front of the roof?
If you refer to sheet, let's go to A2, the site plan.
Okay, all right, so it shows up there. Great. And then lastly, I wanted to ask, the windows upstairs, I believe in bedrooms 1 and 2, they appear to be taller than the windows on the first floor. Is that correct?
Actually, I believe they're both the same height, depending on which windows.
Same height as the windows on the first floor?
It varies window to window. So are you referencing the ones on the front of the house?
Yes.
Yeah, the ones on the front of the house are a little taller because we're on an end gable and wrapping around the corner above the carport. The master bedroom ones in the rear are a little shorter just because we have a roof coming up into them.
Okay, and then so what is your sill height, do you know, in those front bedroom windows?
Yeah, it should be noted on the drawings, but we're at about 2'3", 2'6".
Oh, I see it there now. Okay, 27 inches. All right.
So we're a decent height for a bedroom.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, then. I'm going to ask any members of the public who wish to speak on this item to raise their hand. Okay, did we receive any comments through email or through the chat function?
No, there are no there are no chats and there are no emails either for this project.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I like the changes that the applicants made to the design. I think it's cohesive now. It fits in with the neighborhood to me, as I stated in the last meeting. This is a great block of Burlingame older craftsman homes, and I think that this alludes to that style and that era very well. I think that the changes to the roof over the front porch, tying it together with the garage, really work well to make it all hold together. I can find support for the attached garage because of the other attached garages on the block, and a lot of them, I think there are 4 that are in fact carports as opposed to garages, which seems to work real well, especially with the upsloping lot. And I can find support for the special permit for the direct exit. As I stated before, I like that it doesn't go directly up just the side. It actually turns and comes onto the porch that's in, or the patio that's on the back, which is going to help to mitigate any noise that may happen between this house and the neighbors. So I can support the project as it stands.
Thank you. Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I largely agree with Commissioner Gall. I think the changes are good changes. I think the scale reduction and the rearticulation of the garage and the roof that wraps around is a good one. You know, in general, I can support the project. In general, I think it's a good project. I am not a fan of the mix and match materials that I think are turning architecture in the neighborhoods into mush. I don't think that typically these kinds of materials fit really well in our neighborhoods, but we'll see how that plays out over many years, I guess.
Commissioner Comarot?
Yeah, so I really like the project. I like the changes that were made. I have no problem with any of the raised issues from the last time. They made some great changes. I think it'll fit nicely in the neighborhood.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I like the project as well, and I move we approve the project with the findings in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. And I agree with my fellow commissioners on the comments that have been provided. We have a motion by Commissioner Sargent and seconded by Commissioner Say. Any discussion on the motion? Nope. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Comarot,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say.
Aye. So we have, the motion passes, and An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on a 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,045, including noticing costs. Congratulations. So we move on now to agenda item 8B, 1316 Laguna Avenue. And I believe we have two recusals for this item, Commissioner Comarot and Commissioner Sargent.
Yeah, I'll be recusing because I have a financial interest in property within 500 feet of the project.
Thank you.
Commissioner Comarot, I believe you're muted.
Yeah, got it. I will be recusing because I own a property within 500 feet of the property as well.
Thank you. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Sure. This is an application for amendment to design review for changes to a previously approved first and second story addition to an existing single family dwelling and new detached garage at 1316 Laguna Avenue, zoned R1. During construction of the project, the property owners decided to make modifications to their project and are now requesting that the commission review and approve these as-built changes listed on page 1 of your staff report. The applicant submitted a letter of explanation providing an overview of the proposed changes. Originally approved and proposed plans have also been submitted for review. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I am going to open the public hearing. Oh, sorry. Looks like Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, I do have a question. I want to confirm that these changes were made before anyone. How were these changes discovered? They were made without requesting the change. How did that happen? Do we know?
Yes, so at the end of the project, the applicant or contractor called the planning division to do the final inspection. And while staff was out on the final inspection, that's the time where we caught these changes that were made.
So one other question, I know we've talked about, this is a recurring issue for us, and we've talked about in the past several times how it's made clear to applicants that they're required to build what is approved. How is that information made clear to applicants?
So I think part of it dependent upon the designer or the architect to communicate that to the contractor. Unfortunately, the planning division doesn't have that much interface with the contractor until the end of the project. So we do rely on the designer or the architect to stay on top of it and to communicate with the contractor during construction of the project. In this case, I don't know what that communication was like. Perhaps we can ask the applicant. And the contractor may not be familiar with Burlingame's process, but we can certainly check with the designer or the architect to see how much they were involved in the construction process.
So I know, as an architect, I know that I'm required to build to the code, and that's not just the building code, that's to the planning code. And I would presume that contractors are required to build, they know that they're required to build to the planning code to the code as well, meaning planning code and building code. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If anyone can, I don't know, but I presume that's the case.
I think in our experience, we've had the builders in Burlingame who have done a lot of work. They are familiar with the process. They know to come to planning if they want to make some changes. Again, I'm not aware who the contractor is on this project. He just may not be familiar with our project. Staff has looked into possibly, holding a meeting with the contractor when a building permit is issued, and to meet with them, whether it's in person or over a meeting like this in Zoom, to communicate that more clearly and to make sure they understand the process for asking to make changes. So staff will be looking into that, doing that in the future.
Is there a requirement in Burlingame for a contractor to use a licensed contractor? If you're not the homeowner, I know homeowners can build projects themselves, but if it's not the homeowner, does the contractor have to be licensed?
No,
Could we as homeowner provide?
not yet. Not yet. Just wait.
Sorry.
Just wait. Not being in the building division and not familiar with their codes, I believe they do have to be licensed contractors if it's over a certain amount that the project is valued at, which isn't very much. So I believe it has to be a licensed contractor to build a project such as this.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Actually, just to follow up on Commissioner Loftus's questions. As contractors, we're supposed to know that we're supposed to build to the plan, and it's usually pretty apparent that if you're making big changes, then we should go back to the building department or the planning department. And the state sort of regulates all of us as licensed contractors. It does have to do with the size of the projects and hiring subcontractors and that type of thing. That's really where your licensing and your things come into play. And we can get into further discussion on that later if you want. But I had a question of staff, and that was, I have the minutes from the Monday, May 14th, 2018 meeting, but not from the original design review study meeting. Is that in fact the case, or?
Let me check.
Or am I just missing those meetings or those minutes?
Sorry, Commissioner Gall, which ones do you have?
I have Monday, May 14th, 2018, and that's when we approved the project.
Right. So we only include the action minutes for projects, not the study minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Oh, yes, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add to your project?
Hi, my name is Bill Guan. Is everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. I'm the architect of the project. The project is finished and it's done by a contractor that's not, as well as the owner. They're not very familiar with the Burlingame planning code or the building code. So along the way, they make some minor change, not intentionally, but overall, the changes stay the same. The mass is very much the same. They miss a few detail. The porch is still there. The height, I mean, they all most likely comply, but along the way, they make some minor mistakes. So they really want to come in and to fix it up and present it to the city. And also the project got a lot of support from the neighbor. They do, the neighbor all like it very much. And I hope the commissioner give them a chance since they're so new to this city. So give them an opportunity to, it's a very good, nice project. But that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay,
The owner like to speak.
I'm sorry, I'm asking the commissioners if they have any questions for you. Did you have something else you want to say before I have the commissioners speak?
No, no.
Okay, Commissioner Loftus?
So during the course of the project, did you provide construction observation?
No, no, this is not include my my phase of contracts.
Okay.
I do if the contractor asks me question, I do answer over the phone, but not visiting the site or supervisor or whatever, unless the owner asks me to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, so did the homeowners, did you act as the general contractors then? Did you hire subcontractors? Did you have somebody running the project or did you oversee it?
We, this is Carolyn, we're the homeowners. We hired the company called Bombay Construction as our general contractor.
Okay.
And this is our very first time ever tackle a giant project like this. And we were referred by neighbors who live in the peninsula. We are actually in the peninsula only 2 years so far. So we put in a lot of hopes with this contractor. They showed us their work in Burlingame, in Hillsborough. So what we knew was go by what the contractor tells us. And there seems to be some changes along the way that we did not realize was significant. So as soon as I heard from Catherine the comments, I engaged with the contractor and asked them to retroactively fix as much as we can according to the plan. And we provided some explanations also about why these things are the way they are, but more importantly, after we found out, we were actually really in shock. The kids, we have 3, we can only fit 2 in the camera right now. All of them really love the house and they wish to move in. But the worst case is we borrowed so much money to build it and contractors all became so busy. So the only time we can get a hold of them these days is we call and beg them to come back. And yeah, we're kind of left now, not sure what to do.
So were these changes, and I'm specifically looking at the eave details and the chimney detail that was deleted. Were those changes ideas the contractor came up with, or those ideas that you guys came up with, or how did you guys arrive to eliminate some of those architectural details?
Yeah, totally fair question. I have to confess, I did not know to look for these things. So when the contractor was working on the outside of the house, they asked us stucco, and we said yes, stucco. And they asked us how smooth do you want it to be? So we said, as sort of close to level 5. That's as much as we know. So I do admit we did not catch that.
Okay, but what I'm specifically talking about is the eave details that were deleted on the sides and the back at the gable ends. There were rafters and beams that were supposed to be there, and things like the tile that was on the chimney at the base that's now just smooth stucco. Were those his suggestions, or did you guys just decide to eliminate those?
No, it was all done by the contractor, and we were actually really surprised as well. There was one more thing that was the front porch with the stone, for example. We were only asked to select the color of the stone, but I wasn't even aware that they were not exactly the same as the plan. The plan was actually with the contractor the whole time. So unfortunately, we were not really asked about much beyond the color and the choice of sort of the material.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry.
I just wanted to ask a question, this is Commissioner Say, about the grids on the windows. Who made that decision to remove those details?
It's also the contractor.
So he ordered the windows without your approval?
Yeah.
Review? Yeah.
He ordered the windows, and all we understood was to check on the progress and said, are we done we approved with the foundation? Are we approved with the framing? Are we approved with the window? That was all what we really understood.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any more questions for the applicant? Okay. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? I don't believe I see.
I'm not sure if you can hear us. I know we're not on video. This is Tim Percival and Alex Sousa. We live on the opposite corner on Summer across from this project. And we just wanted to offer support for the project. The house looks good. I think that the details the commission is discussing here don't really impact the look of the building. I'm supportive of this project. The house looks good, and I just wanted to offer support to this couple.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Did we get anything through email or from the chat function?
There are no emails and no chats submitted.
Okay. If that's the case, then I am going to close the public hearing at this time. Commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I feel bad for the homeowners. I will start out by saying that. And I'm doing my very best to not be, to maintain my outrage that this happens in the city, frankly. If people are not going to, if contractors and architects are not going to build the projects that we approve, then the question arises, why should we even bother to approve projects? We can go back to the Wild West prior to design guidelines. You know, as much as I would love to say, rip all the windows out and replace them because this is not what we approved, I'm put in this untenable position. All of us as planning commissioners are put in this untenable position that that's an outrageous thing to do, but so is not building what you're required to build by law. And so, you know, my feeling is that we need a better way to make clear to every homeowner that their contractor and their architect or their contractor and their designer are required to build, by law, required to build what is approved. And if you want to do anything else, you have to come back before you do it. I absolutely hate being put in this position. And it happens 2 or 3 times a year. And so, you know, as I said, I feel bad for the homeowners. Clearly, this happened without their ability to control it, it sounds like. But something's got to be done because otherwise this makes no sense. This whole process is completely meaningless. So I maintained my outrage as best I could. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Gall?
You did very well, Commissioner Loftus. But I share the same sentiments. It's very frustrating to get something like this back after I remember, the reason I was asking you about the design review discussion is because I remember this project specifically. I used to live just a couple blocks down on Laguna, so I know the neighborhood very well. But projects on corners, they need special attention. And I remember specifically talking about the rear of the house because it was going to be so visible because of where the house is located on the lot. So those details on the eave were tremendously important. And I get it. I mean, I build houses for people. It's expensive. And I know that it's seems unfair to have to go back and change things, but I have to believe that there's some accountability from the contractor that maybe the homeowner can go back and get, but the contractor should know. I mean, if you're building just willy-nilly because you got an approved set of plans and a permit, then I don't think that you actually have business being a licensed contractor. So specifically, the gable ends, I think, are somewhat attractive. I think that they should have potentially been scaled down a little bit more, but certainly not just limited to the one right or west elevation. The elevation on the side street, I can't remember which street that is, but that has been stripped of all architectural integrity. It's just smooth stucco walls. You know, I was glad to see when that little bit of tile and stonework was being left on the chimney. I don't know if something could be added there, but I think something should be done because the chimney looks like it's just was added on. I think needs to be something done under the gable ends, whether it matches the front of the house or it goes back to the original design. I think that needs to go there. I'm not happy about not having the grids in the windows. I think that they added, however, the house does look nice with the way the windows are trimmed and the color of stucco that was used. So I could probably pass on the window grids. And then the other one that I'm having a real difficult time with is that metal garage door. That, you know, all you need is to just barely touch it or have your kids start banging a tennis ball against it and it's going to dent. Metal doors are not better, they're just cheaper. And I didn't see many in the neighborhood. So I'm not 100% supportive of the metal garage doors of wood as opposed to the wood one. And again, I think this is something that maybe needs to be gone back to between the architect, the contractor, and the homeowner, and they can hash it out who gets to do what. But I don't see where this project as it stands right now can be approved, because I don't believe that this would have been approved when we first looked at it.
So I too agree with my fellow commissioners, but I also feel badly for the homeowner and want to try to find some type of a compromise with all of this already being done and according to what we see. I also agree that with the corner property, that the left side elevation and at least the visible part of the rear elevation from the street coming up Summer, that some of those details that have been eliminated could be added. Seems fairly easily. The gable end details and the stone cladding on the fireplace are items that could be added easily. And the garage door, I agree with too. I mean, I hate being wasteful, and you know, it's such a difficult thing, a difficult position to be in, as Commissioner Loftus stated. I think the original design, you know, had a lot more character for the home. I also don't appreciate that the porch is now taller than the approved drawings as well. And you can feel the difference when you look at the front of the house. It looks different. The front porch doesn't feel quite as cozy and inviting as it was intended to be. But I know that would be a harder thing to rectify. But I feel the gable end details and the fireplace cladding, and I think the window muntin details I could forego too, even though they do add a lot of character to the home. But anyway, I generally agree with what my fellow commissioners have stated, and kind of wanted to state my piece about that as well. So at this point, I'd like to close the public hearing. And commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Loftus?
So now that I'm beyond my outrage, I think that the gable ends on the left side should be made to match the front of the house, so there's consistency of architecture around the corner. I think that's important. It's just too much to ask the windows to be replaced, although that's the thing that bothers me the most, frankly. So, you know, I will say, I think that one positive thing that came out of the changes to the left-hand side is the additional windows in that blank wall. Those are, you know, they're not great and they seem a little bit haphazard, but it's better than a large blank wall there, I think. And so I would think the gable ends on the left side, the stone at the base of the chimney, and the garage door should be, further work should be done on those, and that we agree to the windows moving forward. So that would be, I'd make the motion that that's what we do, approve the windows and ask that the gable ends at the left, the stone at the base of the stone or tile, whatever it is, at the base of the chimney and the garage door be further changes be proposed there.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Loftus, seconded by Commissioner Gall. Can we have a vote?
Commissioner Comarot. Oh, sorry, she's
She's
recused.
recused.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid.
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 4-0-2-1. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,045, which includes noticing costs. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8C, 852 Fairfield Road. Any commissioners, were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Commissioner Schmid?
Yes, I met with the owner.
Thank you. I don't see anything else, so let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Sure. The proposed project includes a first and second story addition to an existing single family dwelling at 852 Fairfield Road, zoned R1. At the Planning Commission Design Review Study meeting on March 9th, the Commission requested that the applicant consider making additional changes to the project. The applicant submitted a response letter and revised plans to address the Commission's suggestions. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions for staff.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I am going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything you'd like to add about the project? Is the applicant here? Are you muted?
I believe it's Jesse Gersa, but I don't see him as clearly noted as a participant here. I wonder if the property owners for the project are available. You do have the option to either continue the project or discuss the project and take a motion and action.
Okay.
You can also, if you want, bump it down the agenda and proceed and then call it again later and make a decision at that time if you'd rather.
Okay, that's a good idea. Why don't we move to agenda item number 8D? And we'll pause for item 8C for the moment. So item 8D, resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Burlingame recommending to the City Council an extension of existing development entitlements. Can we have a staff report, please?
Sure, yes. This evening, we're asking that the Planning Commission consider a recommendation to the City Council to extend existing and unexpired Planning Commission development entitlements impacted by the San Mateo County Health Officer's Shelter-in-Place Order. The proposed resolution would recommend to the City Council that entitlements expiring between March 17th, 2020 and June 1st, 2020 be extended through September 30th of 2020. This timeframe would encompass entitlements that have been directly impacted by the closure of City Hall as a result of the shelter-in-place order. This would include entitlements for all projects, not just major projects. Between March 17th and May 10th this year, the Community Development Department was not accepting new applications for most planning or building permits, including extensions and permit renewals. Processing of new applications resumed on May 11th. Staff anticipates this matter to be reviewed by the City Council at its June 1st meeting coming up. Therefore, the proposed resolution is specific to permits expiring between March 17th, closure of City Hall, and the June 1st action by City Council. The resolution being considered by the City Council will also include building permits expiring during the same timeframe. Permits expiring after June 1st would be subject to the timelines applicable to when the project was approved. Typically, Planning Commission approvals are valid for 1 year, during which time a building permit must be issued, with the option for an extension of up to 1 year. Given that the Community Development Department resumed accepting applications on May 11th, permittees with permits expiring after June 1st would have the ability to apply for extensions and have those requests considered by the Planning Commission in a timely manner. That concludes my staff report, and I'd be happy to take questions of staff if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Sargent?
So Ruben, do you have an idea of how many permits this is going to affect? I can't hear him. Can anybody else?
Ruben, you're muted. There we go.
There we go. I have that information for you. I knew someone was going to ask. So in March of last year, the Planning Commission approved 7 entitlements. In April, we had 4 entitlements. And in May, we had 7 entitlements. So it could affect approximately 18 applications during that time.
Okay. And that's only if they, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that we don't have this data, but it could be that some of those already applied for and received building permit applications, so they could be under construction already. But that's just to give you an idea. There are about 18 entitlements approved during that time period.
Okay, thanks.
Ruben? Do we have any, I'm sorry, I thought I was muted. Do we have any sense of or idea of any projects that may be expiring around June or July that may be affected by the temporary kind of closure during shelter in place? And
sure. Let's see. In June, we show approximately 5 entitlements expiring. In July, we only had 1. And that's because one of those meetings was canceled. And I can give you an idea of what it is for the remainder of the year, just real quick. So June 5, July 1, August, there are 5. September, there are 10. In October, there are 12. November, 6, and December, 4. So post-August, there are quite a few entitlements that would be expiring.
thank you. All right, then, are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Are there any questions from the public regarding this resolution? I don't see any hands up. Do you see any Zoom requests?
We have no chats and no emails on this matter.
Okay. Then I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do this, as this was an unfair burden put on a lot of people who put a lot of time and energy into their projects. So I would make a motion that we would approve this and move it to City Council.
I second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Gall, seconded by Commissioner Sargent. Is there any discussion on the motion? I actually wanted to bring up a comment. I'm wondering if September 30th is long enough, or whether we simply just go to the end of the year for these projects and let them extend through December 31st.
If I could, through the chair, remember that they do still have the regular extension mechanism available to them. The idea is to sort of do a batch process for the ones that were most directly affected by the closures. I think the other issue that we talked about internally at staff is that if there's a second wave of closures in the fall or winter, we would probably want to just do this again. But we did see some downside in doing a longer extension because we do want to make sure things, progress. And so it's an incentive for people to be mindful of their projects and what they need to do to keep them moving, in that September, October timeframe. Having said that, there's no actual problem with setting a different date. That's something that the commission is totally free to do in their recommendation to council. It's just that staff had discussed that internally and kind of arrived at these dates as being the best stand-in for kind of the immediate problem while keeping the regular regimen in place.
Thank you for that clarification. I think that makes sense, and I can support the motion. So once again, unless there's any other comment, any discussion on the motion, can we please have a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Comarot?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus?
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid?
Aye.
Chair Say?
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-0-1. And I believe it is not appealable.
That's correct.
That's right. It's not appealable. And also we had an extra canine vote that needs to be recorded in the minutes there.
Duly noted. Okay, so let's try to move back to agenda item 8C, 852 Fairfield Road. Is the applicant now present? I don't see the applicant present, or is the homeowner here for 852 Fairfield Road?
It appears that they're not, so we can move it to the end of the study items.
Oh, move it to the end of the design review study items, or could we
Right.
move forward and have a discussion without them? If I suppose we could see if anybody has any questions for the applicant. Would anybody have had any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I had a couple.
Oh, you do? All right. All right, well, let's give them another chance, and we'll move on now to agenda. We're moving on to design review items, agenda item number 9, and item 9A, 612 Burlingame Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? None. I mean, I see everybody has has been able to visit the project site. So let's record that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Sure. The proposed project consists of a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage at 612 Burlingame Avenue, zoned R1. The only application being requested this evening is design review. The project complies with all other zoning requirements. This concludes my presentation, and I'm here for questions for staff.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I would like to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
Are we on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. My name is Chris Ruffat. I'm the primary designer of the project. We were tasked with providing a new single-family residence for a homeowner and his family. And we wanted to stick with a Spanish or mission style, if you will. We borrowed some elements from Burlingame train station. There's also a new home further down the street, or the block that is. However, we wanted to differentiate this from some of the other mission style homes in the neighborhood by trying to step the facades as much as we could, stick with the vernacular of the timbering, clay tile roofing, recessed main elements and porch elements, and adding some articulation on the fireplace. So hopefully we have attempted that in a harmonious fashion. I believe we have a equitable product, and hopefully you agree, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, one question sort of out of curiosity, and that is, how is it determined what looks like 3 windows have shutters, everything else doesn't? What's the thinking there?
Typically, I like to add shutters wherever we have space available. I felt that the shutters went well in the primary gable element in the front, second story. I didn't see other opportunities to add them along the sides, only on the driveway side where we have a little bit more articulation. So in essence, I wanted to, one, save some costs. 2, I didn't want to bunch them all together because we do have some windows that are closer together along the right-hand side and along the back. So answer to your question, I felt that limited opportunity for the shutters.
I thought that might be the case. I don't think it's wrong. Don't get me wrong. I wanted to make sure I understood it, and I figured it might be clearances and having available space, which is the only reason I could think of, or I could.
Yes, the upper gable window element. We wanted to make a little bit more of a statement with that. To minimize the width of the visual of that, I felt that the shutters went well there. So that's why I added them there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Sargent? Commissioner Sargent, are you muted?
Yeah, sorry about that. Am I missing a detail on the window trim detail? What the material is?
I'm not sure. We wish to to provide for a recessed window application with a rolled stucco quarter return. So there wouldn't be any necessarily any specific exterior trim. Only the interior window frame would be, in essence, the trim that would be visible. And the sill element is basically an articulation, a protruding articulation, if you will.
So it's stucco, or is it a stone material, or you don't know?
Stucco on the jambs and head. We had one time had introduced a timbering trim on the head, but we felt it was too busy, so we wanted to have more of a clean look.
Okay. No, I'm actually asking about the sill.
Yes, that would be. I believe that's called out. If it's not, unfortunately, I don't have the large scale plans up on my computer.
Okay, well, maybe you could just take a look at that, and if it's not called out, just call it out when you come back, and maybe just provide a section of the exterior of the window as well.
Sure. I'll provide a head and sill detail.
That would be great. And then on the rear deck, do you have a sense of how that's going to interplay with the views of neighbor yards?
We do. There is a lot of growth in the back of the lot and on the neighbor's property as well. If you'd like us to articulate on that or speak to that, I guess speak to that issue, we could, but I don't have any specific, other than there is a lot of growth in the neighbors opposing rear yard.
Okay, yeah, maybe you could look at that again, because yeah, one of the design guidelines specifically speaks to second floor decks not being viewing platforms into neighboring properties. And it's when a lot's only 50 feet wide, it's really hard to make a second floor deck that isn't. So if you could look at that again, that would be great.
Sure.
And then on the first floor plate height is 10 feet, isn't it?
Yes.
How do you think that's going to interplay with a lot of the neighboring houses there, particularly on either side that look like 8 feet tops?
The precedence, if you will, it was established by a property developed by Gilson Development further down the block, and that had a 10-foot and 8-foot. So we felt that we had good call or good cause to utilize those plate heights. And their house is a lot wider. It is a corner lot, albeit it's a considerably larger lot than we have. So we felt that it was viable to go with 10 and 8.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Schmid?
Yeah, I actually wanted to, the scale was kind of one of my items too. I think the design looks great. The rendering looks great. The big tree in the right there covers the little house to your right, which does have a much lower plate height. And granted, there's a bunch of 2-story homes in the area, so it's not really the overall height that I'm concerned with, but maybe where that first floor roof line kind of starts at 10 feet plus then 2 more feet before you get down to the ground there. I'm wondering if that element could come down and not negatively impact maybe your floor heights. I'm not worried about the 10-foot ceiling as much as just how do we bring maybe some of that right-hand side down a little bit at the eave line so that it's not so tall in comparison to that neighbor to that side.
Well, we have stepped the second floor considerably from the main floor wall. Possible lengthening of eaves sometimes brings a roof line further down. However, maybe that your question, and I'm trying to visualize it in my head, and I don't have a specific quick answer on that. So
it may be just something to look at because the other thing that I kind of noticed too is in your section, you've got about a foot worth of structural space between the floors. And then how do those interact with the outside sill plates? Because we've actually had we had a project recently where by tying that second floor structure into the outside, it made everything go higher. So I'm a little nervous for how your structure is going to all fit in, especially with the open plan that you've got on the ground level.
Right. We can look at that. I'm not. I feel and I believe that we have some very definite setbacks for the upper floor. We could look at that roof question. I'm trying to visualize it in my head as to where an issue is, if there is an issue. I'm not really sure, but.
Right.
Well,
it's just if your ceiling's at 10 feet and you've got beams, if you've got the floor beams coming in, that's going to make that go higher on the outside edge. Something to just, as you start to detail, and when you come back for the next one, maybe having a little bit more in your section will clarify that you're going to be able to do that and not have to raise. Because I'd hate for the structural engineer to drive your design for you.
Right. I mean, we have been trying to maintain massing at a less obtrusive level along the perimeters by not putting it on the floor diaphragm, if you will. But that's something that we could look at.
Great. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had a similar concern as Commissioner Sargent about the window detail. So a detail there or a clarification there or detail would be great. But on sheet A5, you might want to address your keynotes also, because note E, you still are showing the 7.5 wood header trim over the windows. So if you want to delete that so that that's not there. And also, I assume you may have heard or no, but Marvin is no longer making the integrity. It's now an elevate or an essence. So, and you don't need to necessarily specify a window manufacturer, but just for your own information. But getting on to comments about the overall design, I think it's really well done. The only comment I have is that tile cap at the front porch. I like the size of that wall, and I think it presents the entry door really well, but those tile caps on top of those parapet walls always sort of look like, well, we had some tiles left over, and I don't know what the solution is, but I just think that sort of looks like a faux Spanish look. I think all the other details work out really well. I don't know what to do there, but if you could take a look at that cap.
Yeah, there is a house directly across the street that has that. I usually like to do the triple full round end piece. However, the house directly, I think it's directly across the street and to the left, has that half tile element that I kind of like that one.
Does it? Well,
And, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at that. I think I looked at that house, but I thought they had sort of a like 3 rows of tile, you know, like a sort of a stepped back parapet, if you will. I don't know what you would call it, but I'll take a look. I mean, I could be wrong, and if that's the only thing that I don't think works on the design, I think that's minor. But
provide a detail of that as well, if that helps.
It might, but yeah, that's the only comment I really had.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a quick question on A6, on sheet A6, on your proposed left elevation. Are the 2 living room windows deliberately at different sill heights and header heights?
Could I ask you to go to A6? Because like I said, I don't have the plans right in front of me. Is there anybody, let's go to A6.
Here we go. It's there. Do you see the 2 windows flanking the fireplace?
Yes, no, that was, I think that was an 11th hour change, and we can button that up. They should be the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
My other comments have already been addressed by the other commissioners. So now I think we can take all those raised hands down. I think we've answered everybody's. Oh no, Commissioner Comarot.
Hi, thank you. So I think, Chris, it's a really great project and I really like it. My only concern is that back deck. So if you could just kind of look at that and see what the privacy would be like for the neighbors, as Commissioner Sargent mentioned. I think it's a little tougher on these smaller lots. And I ask you to really take a lot of concern about the neighbors and how it's going to affect them and their backyard. And that's really my biggest issue. Everything else has been mentioned by my fellow commissioners.
I think we could look at window placement on that rear neighbor and maybe articulate that on the plans a bit.
Yeah.
It may not be an issue. So yeah.
The other thought I had, Chris, if it's has to be maybe looking at the front of the deck where the gables are coming, where the spirals are, making that maybe more of a solid wall. I don't know. I just
got it. Okay. Yes, I think I understand what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Sargent, did you have another question?
No.
Oh, okay. All right then. So do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? I don't see any. Were there any comments through email or, oh, I see maybe one. Reynold and Michelle Harbin?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, we submitted a few questions. We are in fact the neighbors directly behind this this plan, and we just share that same concern about privacy, having a rear-facing balcony into our backyard. And there were a couple others that we forwarded as well.
Well, the tree that I think the architect was talking about is actually on the subject property. So is that tree going to be removed during construction? Or is that tree remaining the one that would be a privacy tree between our lots?
The landscape plans should articulate that. I don't know that off memory.
I think it showed were only 2 existing trees that were staying, and I think those were at the front of the lot. So I'm guessing that the ones on the back of the lot were being removed. But those are really the only trees that would be tall enough to be privacy trees for the back into our yard.
Yes, we're going to look at the deck privacy item as a whole. So we'll definitely take a look at that. Maybe it's cause to leave that tree. I'm not sure.
Okay, and we had one additional question, which was, are there plans for fencing in the rear side of the property?
There should be a fence, a new fence applicable to the perimeter of the property. So yes, there would be a new fence along the backside.
I guess as the adjoining or landowners, what I mean, does that, how do we get notified when and when the fence will be removed and when it's going to be constructed? Will it be up during construction? Because we have a small dog, so we have that concern as well.
Yes, no, that's a viable concern. I'm not really sure for scheduling purposes how the GC would be handling that. Sometimes there's been conditions of approval where maybe the fence.
Madam Chair, could I?
Yes.
Maybe we could ask the applicant or the neighbor to provide their contact information to staff so they can forward it to the applicant and they could take this conversation offline.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, that's fine by us.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
We've done that already. So just as a side note, though, the plans themselves don't have the correct owner and the property behind your house, so we are not listed there. So, but we did submit a letter, so that should be, the city staff should have that right now.
Okay, great. And staff, I'm presuming you will get that letter to the applicant, if not already.
Yes, we did receive the email from Mr. and Mrs. Harbin, and I was going to read that into the record, but all of their points have been at least brought forward. We will send that email also to the applicant, and that has their contact information on there.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public?
So we did receive one additional email, and I'm not seeing any chats, but let me go ahead and read the additional email. This is from Jennifer Pfaff. Dear Planning Commissioners and RDS Designs, Christian Rufat. I live a couple of blocks from this neighborhood and find this to be a particularly lovely designed residential project. Lots of attention has been paid to the details, in particular, the substantial depth of windows and various materials without piling on too many different elements. It just works so well. Thank you for the effort. You clearly have spent studying the area carefully so that your project will blend in with and complement the surroundings. Bravo, Jennifer Pfaff.
Thank you. Anything else from the public? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners' comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I like the project a lot. It's very nicely done, with 2 exceptions. One of which is as Commissioner Sargent mentioned, 10-foot plate height is just too big for this neighborhood, irrespective of what one might find down the street, a newer house built down the street. These are smaller homes there. And to come in with a 10-foot plate height and adjacent to all these smaller homes is very aggressive in my view. And then the other thing that I would like to bring to the attention is these are the kinds of light fixtures that I've never seen one like these light fixtures that will meet the lighting guidelines for the city, because they have no cutoff. But if you can find such light fixtures that have a cutoff preventing light from leaving the property, that would be great. but they won't right now meet the requirements. These are classic bulb showing light fixtures.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I just echo what actually to start, I really like the project. I think it's really nicely designed and really nicely detailed, and I think it'll fit very nicely into the neighborhood, particularly if they can relook at that 10-foot plate height as Commissioner Loftus just articulated. And on a minor detail, if the applicant could look at the site plan details or the landscape plan. I didn't see anything in there about a new fence, but I may have missed it. So if they could relook at that and make sure that's included in the plan when they come back, if it isn't there already. Getting back to the deck, I think that, as I was mentioning before, and we've started talking about this more in recent meetings, so I'm sure.
Please mute your mic.
Sorry, I will.
And we've started talking about this more in recent meetings, that these second floor decks can really be a platform for viewing into neighbor yards. I mean, and we've talked about it many times that there isn't any guarantee of privacy in our design guidelines or our codes, but this is one specific area where the guidelines are pretty clear about looking closely at this. So I think that really needs to be revisited, and I'm not sure how it can meet the design guidelines and be on that lot. And I think I assume we're going to look at another application later this evening on Fairfield, I think it is, where they have a deck as well that we asked them to screen to shield it from the neighbor properties. And in my mind, at least, that's a little different because that's a pretty severely sloping lot, and that deck is actually coming off the first floor. So I think that should be treated a little differently. I think we're in the process of putting together a meeting with the neighborhood review subcommittee that we're going to look at this more closely. But those are just my thoughts on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? I don't see anything else, and I have nothing new to add to what my fellow commissioners have already stated. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to bring this back on the regular action calendar.
And I would second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Loftus. May we have a roll call vote, please? Oh, first of all, is there any discussion on the motion? I think not. So we will go to the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Comarot.
Aye.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid.
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-0-1. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,045, including noticing costs. Congratulations. So moving on to agenda item number 9B, we have 920.
Just through the chair.
Study.
Sorry, through the chair, we don't need the appeal procedures for design review study items.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
that was not applicable on the last project nor on the next one.
Okay, sorry about that. Scratch that. We'll move on to item number 9B, 925 Howard Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners want to state any ex parte communications regarding this project?
John Schmid, I met with the neighbor next door on Howard.
I'm sorry, and I should have made this comment earlier, but if you could give just sort of the general substance of what that conversation was, that's helpful for the record.
Okay, we talked about actually just windows facing their direction, which there aren't any in the elevations now, which they were happy, and they're concerned about parking.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, the proposed project consists of facade changes and a second-story addition to an existing single-story commercial building at 925 Howard Avenue, zoned Myrtle mixed use. The existing building is non-conforming in parking since it has no on-site parking spaces. The parking demand for the previous use was 5 parking spaces, and the parking demand for the proposed office use is 9 parking spaces. The difference between the existing and proposed demand is 4 spaces. I should note that the existing building is vacant, but was previously occupied by a print shop and also an auto shop. The project includes converting the space to an office, as well as a second-story addition to be part of that same office. For commercial uses, the code, 2 new parking spaces are proposed on site, located in the enclosed rear portion of the rear of the building. Therefore, there's a deficiency of 2 parking spaces based on the proposed demand. The applicant has submitted a request for a parking variance for the number of parking spaces provided on site. For commercial uses, the code requires that vehicles be able to turn around and exit the site in a forward direction. As proposed, vehicles will be exiting the site by backing onto the street. Therefore, the applicant is also requesting a parking variance for vehicles exiting the site by backing onto the street. Staff would note that prior to the May 26th meeting this evening, the applicant revised the proposed second-story addition to comply with the required 5-foot left side setback. However, this was not noted by planning staff and therefore is not reflected as such in the staff report. This revision eliminates the need for a left side setback variance. To summarize the applications that are being requested this evening, we have commercial design review, front setback variance, 0 feet, 0 inches proposed at the first floor where 10 feet is required. And as previously mentioned, parking variance for the number of spaces provided on site, and also parking variance for vehicles exiting the site by backing onto the street. This concludes my staff report, and I can take questions for staff if you have any at the moment.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmid?
Yes. So the new use is asking for 9 spaces and there's only providing 2, and you're saying that there's a deficit of 2 spaces. Are we not really in a deficit of 7 spaces?
Right. We do give, when we look at the parking requirement, we look at the existing demand and proposed demand. So we do give them credit for the existing uses that were on site. So the increase from 5 to 9 is 4 spaces. So the code says you have to provide parking for the intensification of use. So in this case, the intensification requires 4 spaces. They're only providing 2 spaces on site. Therefore, the parking variance is for 2 spaces.
But was there a variance previously for this building? And we're changing uses.
I don't believe there was a variance issued or granted for the uses that were on the site. I believe we reviewed the file and didn't find that. But as is provided in the zoning code, we only look at the intensification of use. So although the proposed use would require a total of 9. We're only looking at the intensification of use, and they get credit for the uses that were there as non-conforming uses.
So then is there any, I didn't see anything that would say that we understand how the parking in the neighborhood works now. I mean, when I was there, there was, there's not a lot of people around and there was plenty of parking. But there's a large scale housing development going on down the street on Myrtle. And it is actually relatively close to the Caltrain station. So I'm not sure how much Myrtle fills up regularly.
Sure, I think with the uses that were in place along Myrtle before construction of the multifamily residential project started, a lot of the uses or a lot of the buildings did not have the required parking on site. Now with those uses being eliminated and replaced with the 920 Bayswater project, that project will be providing the required parking on site. Therefore, in general, you will see that parking may be more available on the street, and the train station is nearby. And also the public parking garage is currently being built, although it's on the west side of California Drive, it is within a few blocks of this site.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Not, I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name's Eric Koppel. I just want to say hello. And we purchased this property for our family-run real estate and investment company. We think it's a great neighborhood, and I was actually born and raised here in the Burlingame area. We look forward to improving the street, and I think we really got a good project planned for everyone. It's a great place, and we can easily ride our bike to work every day, and I think it's going to be a great spot for my brother, my sister, and I to work from, and we're looking forward to it. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm going to pass this on to our architect, Stephen and Anjali, and I think they should be on the call here now.
Great. Thank you, Eric, for the intro. I'm Stephen Stept. I'm with Feldman Architecture in San Francisco. My associate, Anjali Ayar, is on the call as well if we have to reach out to her for any question and answers. So as Eric said, we're super excited about this project. The clients currently operate their business in Burlingame at the moment over on Airport Boulevard. So as Eric said, they're familiar with Burlingame. Burlingame's close to their heart. They bought this building, which was really an underdeveloped kind of 1950s industrial building that really had no character. And you can imagine, like many other older towns of the peninsula cities that are scattered around, this building in the 50s is, had its heyday, 60 years ago, like many other neighborhoods. So they really are looking to transform this and give it new life. They found us because I had done another project to transform a building on El Camino Real in San Carlos, within the last couple of years, and that's kind of was the inspiration for this building. So, as Eric said, they're a family-owned company. There's 5 people. There's the 3 siblings and mom, who's part of the business still. This building is really for their offices. They do not have any on-site visitors that come to engage with them in terms of the business operations and the day-to-day basis at all. So this is really for them to park themselves. We're creating a second-story addition of roughly 600 square feet to kind of fill out the program, which basically consists of a conference space, some open office space, and then an outdoor deck where they can kind of escape and get outside and get some fresh air. Because this building, as you know, fills up the entire site. That's why we're asking for the variance for setbacks as well. So in terms of the building itself, and we're basically looking at this to articulate and transform the skin of this building and to redefine its purpose, essentially at a scale that's kind of good for the neighborhood. The second story is set back. It's in the middle of the building. It maintains all the required setbacks. You barely notice it in terms of the experience from the street, but from the street, we've carved out the entrance, put the entry close to the corner, and really made us a much more refined approach to the entry. We also took the side windows and made them a little larger so that they actually open up more to the street than the prior punch windows that were part of the old auto factory space. The windows do pay homage a little bit to the historical building, which had standard like steel industrial sash. So we've kind of created that vibe and that feel to give it some detail on the street. And that, you know, at the pedestrian level, we also added some street trees, which will kind of, these are really broad sidewalks here. So we wanted to add some landscape and some greenery, not only for us to look out, but for the building to kind of be surrounded by. So we really think we've improved the corner of this building. You know, like I said, we feel like the Burlingame is starting to infuse itself across the street, and it's a really interesting mix of how urban meets residential and mixed use down the street. So it's a nice, you know, collaboration to what's going on in the street in a very simple and subtle and sophisticated way. That was the goal. The neighborhood's diverse. I think the style of the building brings a certain warmth and residential scale. The materiality on the facade is a series of slats. I mentioned the windows already. The slats kind of break down the scale, give it some texture instead of kind of the flat white painted building that it was before. And finally, I guess I would just touch base for a minute about the variances. Yes, we are asking for a variance for the front and side setbacks. This building is a block building. There is no way to really reduce the scale of this building other than what it is already. We're really working with the shell of what's there. We are taking up 40% of the building. You don't see a plan, I don't believe in your application, but 40% of the plan of the building is taken up for parking to create these 2 parking spaces. The garage is roughly in the same location as the prior garage was. So in terms of its impact on the street, it's basically no change as far as we see it. Yes, we are gonna have to back out. That's seems fairly subtle and minor because it's a secondary street, Myrtle. I think those are basically the big issues on the project, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I like the project. I think it's really going to be a nice addition to that changing area there. I did have I'm having some discomfort with the variance for the parking spaces. And I was wondering if you looked at any alternative parking methods like parking stackers.
We have actually, and the complex answer to that, and maybe Anjali can fill in that a little bit more, is that we're required to have a certain amount of accessible parking. So we are providing the accessible parking, but takes up a certain amount of area. So there's limited amount of space for the stackable. I think basically with it, you know, so that's the conflict to some degree. We have a lot of space of 40% of the building that's taking up 2 parking spaces.
Okay, so basically stackers won't fit because you need to have an accessible space.
It's hi, this is Anjali here. It's interesting you bring that up. We actually had, I think, at least 2 to 3 rounds of back and forth with both building and planning about how we accommodate the cars in this garage space. We did originally do our research and propose a stack and lift system. So we do have enough headroom in that existing shell with the trusses above to stack 2 tiers of cars. But unfortunately, there is no way that we can provide an accessible parking space right next to the stacking system. That just doesn't work. And that was not something that the building department was willing to give us any sort of a concession on, which ended up with us providing just 2 spaces.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, so those parking spaces or that garage area, I see it is taking up a large amount of that first floor, but that building is 50 feet roughly there. So conceivably, and I know it wouldn't qualify, but conceivably you could put more cars in there. Is that correct?
Conceivably, yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm sort of assuming that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what I would do if it was my building. So, and we were working there. So I think that you you actually have probably more parking than, you know, you're showing or you're putting in your application. But
That's a fair assessment. And we also wanted to note the fact that, like Stephen mentioned earlier, there are no visitors to the building really. And none of the people using the occupants of the building are handicapped at this point. So we need to navigate this issue one way or the other. We're not sure how that plays into with current code.
Let me add one more bit of information to that too. So in our application, you see some renderings at the beginning of the application. We didn't update the renderings compared to what the elevations are. But when we first envisioned the building, we actually had proposed to have 2 garages so we can actually maximize the amount of parking we could get in there. And then we got into the whole conversation, as Anjali mentioned, about the handicap accessible spaces and then the curb cut. So we ended up with 1 garage in this application you see in front of you today.
Okay. Okay. My only other question is just comparing your site roof plan on A1.2 and your renderings. Your renderings are showing 2 trees on the Howard Avenue side and 3, I think, on the Myrtle side, which I think looks really nice. Is that your intent, is to get more street trees there?
We did originally have a good balance of trees, the 3 trees you're seeing on Myrtle, and we actually had a couple on Howard, but unfortunately, we are having to remove the ones, or we had to take off the ones that were on Howard because there's a stormwater line that runs right under the sidewalk there, and that would be problematic for the trees. But yeah, the intent really was for all of these apertures from the building to look onto trees. But we're doing it where we can.
Okay. Well, we got to talk to Public Works. They shouldn't be putting those pipes there. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Do we have anything received through email or chat?
We do not.
Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Say. So I really like the project, and I'm also a little bit, not uneasy. I'm a little bit bothered by the project in that I think it's going to be a huge improvement. The simple stacking of box on box, the second floor box on the lower floor box, feels like a missed opportunity to me. It feels enormously like a missed opportunity looked at in pure elevation, which you will never actually experience it at. As in the renderings make me a little bit more easy. But it feels to me like a missed opportunity that to simply stack a box on top of another box and not take advantage of the opportunity that this new object sitting on top of the lower box provides you to give it sort of more character. And I'm immediately struck by, I worked on a project in the city a few years ago. It was to add a floor to a building called 100 Cal in the city. And we added a floor to the 14-story building. And on the top of that 14-story building was a penthouse that reminds me a lot of this. And it was much smaller. It was smaller in height than this. But what really struck me about it, it was a 1960 building, built in 1960. It had a folded plate roof. The building, the box on top had a folded plate roof that was quite beautiful. And it feels to me like something other than a simple stacking of boxes is in order here. You know, is it a deal killer for me? No, I think it's a good project, but it feels like a missed opportunity. The box on top feels a little bit tall to me as well. I mean, we're talking about a 15 by 12 room with a 10-foot ceiling, and a 10-foot ceiling you don't find it's rare to find a 10-foot ceiling in an office space of a 25,000 square foot office building. More often you would see 9, 9.6 in a large floor plate building. So 10 feet seems a little tall to me, but again, is it a deal breaker? No, maybe not. But I think the box on top, the additional space deserves another look. Other than that, I think this is a very nice project.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I would agree. As I said, I think it's a very nice project. I think this neighborhood is transforming with both the office building across the street and the new apartments down the street here. And I think this is a nice use for this building. I don't see a problem making the findings for the setback variances, particularly since they address the second floor setback. I mean, it's an existing condition, and I think it would be burdensome to have to move those walls back. But I'm a little less comfortable with the parking variance, particularly the reduction in parking spaces. And I guess what I'd hope is that the applicant could go back on I understand the limitations placed with the accessible stall that's required, but yeah, I hope they can take a little bit more look at what Commissioner Gall brought up about the width of the building, and it seems like that's a possibility for maybe a tandem parking configuration, perhaps in combination with parking stackers. That's actually the tandem sites are something that we've approved through a variance on another project. I believe it was actually on Myrtle a couple years ago. And it, so I think that's something that might work here. I don't think the MMU zoning guidelines specifically encourage looking at alternative parking methods, but I think this is a neighborhood that would work for that. And regarding the second variance of backing up onto the street, I think I'd like to, maybe the applicant can revisit their variance application, because I think I need to understand more why it's in the code that it shouldn't happen, and or it's enough of a safety risk that it's not allowed in the code, and maybe they could address that, because it seems like that's a possibility here, because Myrtle is a side street, so it wouldn't be the same as backing onto Howard. So I think that could be addressed.
Commissioner Comarot?
Yeah, so my biggest question really is that second floor. I'd like you to, if you could just take a look at it. That addition up top just feels it's a little bit too big. I agree with Commissioner Loftus. And that's pretty much it. Everybody else has pretty much spoken on the other terms. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmid?
Yeah, I like the project too. I think it looks good. I don't see how we're going to be able to change all the setbacks and things, given that it's already built out. And it does seem a shame that so much of the space is trying to make the parking work. But I think it'll be a nice project. I think the use is pretty low intensity. So I think that will be good. But the parking is a little bit of a concern, just not knowing the impacts in that area. So, but otherwise, I think it's a good project. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah. So yeah, back to the parking. As I'm looking at that garage, it seems to me that if you might need to rework the garage door a little bit, but it seems to me you could probably get 5 cars in there if you put 3 towards the back and the ADA parking space was towards the door. And I think that would all comply. And like Commissioner Sargent said, we have approved tandem parking in the past, but it would give you a little bit more room. I wasn't sure what was bothering me about the design because overall I really like it, but when Commissioner Loftus brought up the box on top of the box, I need to agree with that. And I don't necessarily think it's too big. I think it maybe just needs to not be a rectangle. Maybe just a little change of the floor area up there or something. And if you had I don't know, if it popped out a little bit more on one side or something, but not just a big square. But overall, I think it works for the building. So I'm in the same position. I like that big overhang and that shaded area. I think it would be a great place in the afternoon. But maybe if you did something to just dress that up a little bit on top too, so it wasn't just such a box, I think that would help. But overall, I really do like the project.
I agree with my fellow commissioners on a number of the comments that have already been made. Just one additional thought, since we now know that the trees on Howard can't be planted due to the sewer lines below. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity at the to the left of the entry where you have a little bit of a angled inlet, whether there's an opportunity for some planters along that window wall, that you would lose a little space on the interior, but it could, I think, add some warmth to the entrance and a little bit more character there on Howard, just to add a bit of landscaping and kind of make up for the loss of the landscape requirement that you are asking to be excused for. So I just like you to take a look at that if possible. And otherwise, the other comments have already been addressed by my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Sargent, did you have another comment?
No, I was going to make a motion to bring this back on the regular action calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Comarot. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, why don't we move to the roll call vote?
Commissioner Comarot,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-0-1. So now I guess we can take a look at item 8C again and see if our applicant has arrived for the meeting. I don't see Jesse Versa on the as an attendee. Is
No,
is the homeowner available from 852 Fairfield Road? So it looks like the answer is no, and considering that we have some questions from at least one commissioner for the applicant, it looks like we'll have to defer this item to another meeting.
That's correct. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say probably what Ruben was, which is that's correct. It's also agendized for tonight. So if you want to articulate if there are issues that you would like the applicant to address before it comes back, you can take this time to do that. You obviously can't take any, well, you could actually take a final action on it, but you may not want to until you have the benefit of the discussion with the applicant.
Thank you. So did any of the commissioners want to add some commentary or some for the applicant to address? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, so the questions that I had were on sheet D4 note 5, he says remove the corner boards, but on the rest, all the drawings, it shows corner boards on there. So I'm assuming that's just a drafting error. But my main concern on this one, I mean, I would go along with the corner boards simply because they're on the existing house. So in this case, I can see those being part of the existing design, and that appears to be what's happening, is that the designer's trying to keep with the original design. But I got all these details for window flashing and all this other stuff, but what really kind of makes this house for me is the boxed eaves and the rafter tails or beams that are sticking out there, and I don't see any detail for that, and I don't see those rafter tails necessarily being consistent. It looks like they're trying to go around the house, but there's some spots where I think that they were missing a little bit. So, but it's kind of the boxed eave thing. I just want to make sure that that is in fact the way that that's going to go. Specifically, like on the left side elevation on the what would be the main or first floor, there are only 3 and they're not in a regular pattern, where on the second floor they are. So it's just some of those smaller details. I mean, I suppose it could probably move forward, but I would really be sorry if this got approved and it was not the intention to emulate or redo or make all the eaves boxed in like they are on the original house. But overall, I think it's a really good design.
Sorry, I was muted. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts to add for the applicant's consideration? So unless someone wants to make a motion to move this forward, it seems that maybe.
I'm sorry, through the chair, we also just need to check and make sure there isn't any member of the public who's wanting to comment on this as well.
Okay.
Just because if you've discussed it, which you have, then if someone is logging in for tonight or wanted their ideas expressed tonight, then they have that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody in the public like to speak on this item? I don't see any raised hands. Do we see any emails or chat items?
No, there are none.
Okay. And so I guess I have opened and closed the public hearing in one move. Commissioners, do you want to move this forward? Does anyone want to make a motion, or shall we bring this back? We could certainly discuss it as well on the consent when it's under on the consent.
I don't see why we couldn't move this forward with a request for an FYI to address those items that Commissioner Gall brought up. I mean, I think in the last hearing, we agreed that this was a good project. It seems like they've addressed almost everything that we brought up. And I'm not sure, but it seems to me at least that there wouldn't be a benefit for having another discussion on this. And that by requiring an FYI, we can make sure those details get addressed.
So is that a motion?
Sure, since you're not objecting, I'll make a motion to approve this project with the direction to the applicant to submit an FYI confirming the rafter details and also the corner treatment.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Gall. Is there any discussion on the motion? Looks like there isn't. So can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Comarot.
Aye.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid.
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-0-1. Do I read the appeal paragraph for this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so an action by the planning commission is appealable to the city council within 10 days of the planning commission's action. If the planning commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the city council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,045, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. And now we jump forward to agenda item number 10, commissioners' reports. I don't believe there are any commissioners' reports. Okay, and then moving to agenda item number 11, directors' reports. Are there any directors' reports?
Yeah, I just had two quick items. First is that the Neighborhood Consistency Subcommittee will be meeting next week to talk and to discuss several of the issues, some of which were brought up this evening. So we'll get together, we'll discuss those items and then report back to the Planning Commission. And second, I just wanted to give you an update with regards to the ADUs, the draft ordinance. So the City Council looked at it and they set it for adoption on June 1st. However, prior to that meeting, we did receive a letter from Californians for Home Ownership. And they've brought up some concerns in the way that the city has interpreted some of the state law. So what we've decided to do is send the draft ordinance to HCD for review of the proposed draft ordinance and to comment on before we bring it back to City Council for either reintroduction or adoption. So we'll keep you posted on that, but we're hoping to hear back from them within the next week or two.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anything else? If not, this meeting is adjourned at 9:06 p.m.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Ruben.
Yes.
Hey, Ruben. You know, I was just thinking about that one on Laguna. When they come in to get some clarification, you might want to just suggest to them that they go to the state license board because they mediate some of those things. It sounds to me like the contractor screwed this whole thing up, and I feel real bad for them. And maybe the board can help them out, but they will, you know, get everyone together and sit